computer. All right, so yesterday was new site, what was it, new site 4?
Yes.
So today we're covering new site 5, and tomorrow is the last of the new site challenges. So yeah, tomorrow is the last day of new site. So with that, what is it? April 6th. Let's talk about the fetch API. What does the fetch API allow us to do?
Get data from
API requests.
Oh, heard a couple people.
Send HTTP requests.
Yep, the fetch API allows us to do HTTP requests. What are the different HTTP requests? Anybody? I mean,
Get, post,
get,
delete,
post.
all right. What does get do?
just retrieve data.
Okay, retrieve data. I heard post request. What does post do?
Send data.
Data.
Allows us to send data.
It's
You can also update too.
Can you elaborate on post? Like, because we're still sending data when we do a get request.
post
Sending
sends
data to the
encrypted
data.
data, right?
Sorry, a couple people.
Post request sends encrypted data, right? Like form data for that shouldn't be accessible by anyone else.
Doesn't necessarily mean it's encrypted. That, like, if it's an HTTPS, then it is encrypted. But when do you want to run, like, send a post request?
When you want to create a new record in the database.
Yep, exactly. When we want to save or create a new record in a database. I heard someone else say update a database. So that's a put request. There's also patch, which is very similar, but it's very rarely used. I've never seen it being used. And then what's the last one that we have?
Delete,
Delete. And what does delete do?
remove something from a database.
Yes. So with new site, what kind of requests have we just been using so far?
Get.
Yep, get requests. So get requests, we've just been using the fetch API to have get requests. But today we're going to do, so if you want to see a little additional information on posts, the different types of HTTP requests, they're right here. So, yeah. But let's talk about making a post request. So we haven't yet done that yet in the new site, but we have done it in this cohort. Does anybody recall what challenge we were creating post requests using HTTP? It was one of the worst challenges. Does anybody remember? It was a while ago. I think week 5.
Was it the HTTP server challenges?
Yep, the HTTP server challenges. Exactly. So let's talk about HTTP. Whoa, let's clear that. So right here, I'm just literally on like the JSON placeholder where we can just run and grab mock data, such as right here. So if I want to do I can do post. Whoop. Just gonna clear here. So this JSON placeholder allows us to run fetch requests and just grab fake data, so we can just make sure that we kind of know what we're getting. So if I come over here and I do like posts, I want to grab post number 5, I get, this is the HTTP response I get back, which is, a user ID, a title, an ID, and a body. But you can actually also make post requests using the fetch API. So right now, the fetch API is only accepting one argument, which is the URL, the endpoint where we want to get data from. But if we wanted to make post requests, we can, the fetch API accepts a second argument, which is an object. So if I wanted to do, where is it? Whoop. Whoop. Let's go up here. So if I come down here, and if I see the different routes, if you recall from the HTTP server, what did we need in order to successfully send a post request? There are some different elements that we might need. Does anybody remember? It's totally okay if you don't.
You're talking about like in the body of the request, you need to add a like an application type and browser, kind of like the details.
Yeah, so you can say like, so we need a body of the request, which is the actual content that we're sending through. So in HTTP server, when we got a response back, what was in the body of the request was actually the HTML. But in here, when we're making a post request, what's going to be in the body of the request is actually going to be the content that we want to save, such as like an article or a user or something like that. And then I also heard you say like something about like the browser. There's a bunch of stuff that we can send through. Is there anything else? Is there like a specific term or a specific attribute that have you heard of, like sending what needs to be sent through a post request? Can anybody else think of anything else?
Is it a header?
Yep, exactly. The headers. So if we need to make a post request using HTTP, using the fetch. So here, this is just an example, listing all the resources, creating a resource. So right here, I'm going to copy this over and just come over here, and I'm just going to clear this and post this in here. I'm just going to come over here. So in the fetch, we go to the API endpoint that we want to post to. So for example, here it's JSON placeholder typecode.com/posts. And the second argument we're passing in is an object. And this object can contain other things in addition to this, but it will contain headers. So headers, the content type of what we're actually passing through to the back end. We don't necessarily need this, but we can have that. But so we're going to be passing application JSON data. What type of method we're passing in? So this is going to be a post request. And then, as Brian said, we're also going to be passing data in via the body. So the body is the actual content that we're actually sending to the back end that we want to save somewhere. And we can't just send a JavaScript object back to the back end. We have to JSON stringify it. We have to turn it into a JSON object, and then pass that through back to the database. So that's where we have this JSON.stringify. We're stringifying this post object that has a title, a body, and a user ID. And then depending on whether or not we get a successful response back, or regardless of whether it successfully saves to the database or not, we're going to get a response back. Just like we did with the GET request, we're going to turn that GET request from a JSON to a JavaScript object. And then we're just going to console log it. So right here, this is the actual response we get with an ID of 101. That's probably the 101st post that we actually saved to the database. So we're going to be doing this in new site 5. So come over here. Yeah. So where is it? So I'm just gonna delete that. Does anybody have any questions about making a post request using the fetch API?
Question, Tom.
Yep.
The difference between these get, post, delete, update, and CRUD is the fact that we're reaching out to an API. Otherwise, it's technically the same thing.
So what we are doing, so yeah, essentially what we're doing is reaching out to an API, whether it's a third-party API or an internal API in our application. And that's what we're doing. We're CRUDing. We're creating, reading, updating, deleting, which is all that utilizes all the different HTTP methods: get, post, update, or get, post, put, delete methods. And that's what CRUD is. I don't know if that helped answer your question.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, cool. All right. There was another thing I was going to say, but maybe it'll come to me when I'm going through this. All right. So for new site 5, high level objectives, we're going to create the ability to add an article to our news site. And we're going to add just a simple login UI that doesn't really have any functionality yet. We're going to get to authentication tomorrow. So if you come in here, you can kind of review the different HTTP methods: get, post, update, delete. Can anybody tell me the difference between a get request and a post request? Just as far as where the data is being read.
So a GET request is being read from the server to you, and then a POST request is the data is being read from you and saved to the server.
Yep. Yeah, that's definitely 100% correct. Also, when you're sending a GET request to the server, where is it looking for data? Like in the request. So for a GET request, it's only accessing the data from the URL. So if you noticed, like when we run a GET request, all of our filters, all of our querying belongs inside of the URL. So if you go to like news API, so when we actually do like a query for something, the query we're passing through to the server is all in the URL. It doesn't doesn't read from the body of the request. That's why we don't pass in like a body for when we do GET requests. Whereas a post request actually reads from the body of the request, in addition to the URL. Just keep that in mind. All right. So let's go ahead and start this. So I'm going to fork this over. So I've already forked it over to my GitHub. I Git cloned it already. Where did it go? There it is. Oh, which one is that? All right. So here's my new site 5. I've already copied over the source directory from new site 4. I've updated my package.json to utilize the most recent of my Bootstrap, React Router DOM. I think React Bootstrap. I'm using React Bootstrap in my application. But yeah, let's kind of look through, make sure. So initial setup. If you'd like to use your own code from new site 4, which I am, copy over the entire source directory, which I already did, and replace the starter source code with this repo. Okay. Then run npm run update tests. I'm probably not going to go through the tests today. I'll just go through getting the article object and all of that working. And then run npm install, and then run npm run start. And then we'll jump into creating an article. So I did do all that already, just streamline the process. And let's go ahead and run npm run start just to make sure everything is working correctly. All right, it's opening it up. And mine might function a little bit different than everyone's. Yours might function a little bit different than mine. That's totally okay. So here's my article or news site. I'm able to read an individual article, go to a different, or go to an individual article. I can visit a different section, business section, like so. So it's updating the sections. Also, I'm able to search. I believe in the requirements, it wanted to do live updating for the search, like live filtering, but just from a usability standpoint, that's not usually how search functionality works in applications. So I did it like when you actually click the search button. So if I click like, I want to search for PA, whatever, and I click search, it says your search returned 1 articles. So that's probably a little thing I can optimize right there. If I just do P, your search returned 24 articles. So everything should be working, but let's just quickly run through the actual code of what's, so in my app.js directory, I've got the home page, the article page, and the section page. This should have all been done yesterday. I've got my article page, my home page, and I've done this in a functional based component. And with this use effect for the home page, here it is. Here's the handle search functionality. So here's that form on the article page right here. And when I click handles, when I type in my search query in the form control and I click the submit button, it runs this handle search, comes in here, event prevent default, extracts the value from the search input box. It says, hey, if the search query has a length, fetch articles, goes to the fetch articles API. Bring this up, split the screen. What is it? Fetch articles. So here's my fetch articles right here. If it does have a filter, which it currently does, which is the search query, runs console logs, fetch articles, and then returns the fetch API. And I've got some string interpolation that determines whether or not there is a filter or not in it. So this adds the filters query if there is a filter being passed in as an argument, and then grabs that response, turns it into JavaScript object, and then just returns that data. And then grabs the articles. I set the articles, so the state of the articles up here on line 64. So that's a list of articles. And then I also create a message. So your message returns just the article's length of how many articles actually got returned. And I set that up here in the set message. I don't even think I need to use that use history. And I do some conditional formatting right here that displays an alert depending on whether or not, or an alert of how many articles got returned. So everything's still working. Great. Does anybody have any questions about all of that, just to make sure everything's working?
Maybe not right now, but later today, could we get shown how to do that stretch goal of moving the search bar into the nav bar? I tried for a good couple hours trying to do that. Couldn't figure it out.
Okay, yeah, we can definitely do that. All right, cool. So it says, let's test the fetch command in the console. So we can come over here. I'm just gonna copy this code, article object, and then I'm gonna go to my new site application. I'm just gonna go back to the home page just to make sure we're right here. I'm going to paste that in here. So what I'm pasting is I'm creating a new article object variable that has a title, which is called, has test value, has a byline, which says byline test, and an abstract that just says I can actually just say, that says just ASDF. And then I'm creating a fetch. I'm running fetch to localhost 3001 API articles, which is the same API that's up here, just that the default URL variable. But I'm also passing in this object, which contains the headers, content type, application JSON, the method, what kind of method am I doing? I'm posting data to the database. So it's a post method. And then what data I'm actually passing in to the body is this article object variable right here, but I need to JSON stringify it. So I JSON stringify it right there. So I post it, and then I get a response back, and then it's supposed to just console log that response back. So if I click on enter, I get the response back, which I'm console logging. So it's right here, the abstract byline. It says created at date. So that's also being passed back from the database. The ID is 41 because originally there's 40 articles in the database, but now there's 41. And if I come all the way down here and I refresh, I get this test article to make sure it actually posted. So there we go. And now it's still persisting. It's great. Questions about just testing out the fetch, the post request using fetch?
I had a question, but it was a little bit off topic. So when a user logs in, the server creates a token for them, and that's how they're able to tell the server, hey, I'm this person. I have access to these things. Is that correct?
100%. So you're getting a little ahead, which is great. I'm glad you're thinking like that. So tomorrow when we're talking about authentication, in addition to these headers and method, we're also going to be passing in an authorization attribute, that token that's being sent back after a user is logged in. We're going to pass that token in to the post request. So that's how the server is going to test whether or not that token is valid. And if it's valid, that means that that person that's sending that request has access to that functionality of whatever they're trying to do. So whether it's making a post request or seeing specific UI, depending on whether a user is logged in or not.
And as far as the token, it can be either in the header or it can be saved in the cookies?
Yeah, you can actually save it. So you'll actually, so here you'll be saving it in local storage initially, but yeah, you can technically save it in session storage, cookies. Yeah, but it needs to be stored someplace in the browser, typically.
Thank you.
Yep, no problem. All right, so we refresh the page and scroll down. We saw that last test article. That's great. Check the console for some errors. Part of your job today is to handle these types of issues / errors. So we'll get to that. So release 0, we're going to actually create the AddArticle API. Before we do that, let's go ahead and take a 10-minute break and be back at 10:25, and we'll jump into the AddArticle, creating the AddArticle API. All right, so the first things we need to do here are create an AddArticle method to, in fact, add an article. So let's bring up here. So over here in our articles API, if we scroll down here, we have fetch articles. I'm going to go down here and just create an add article. So I'm going to do const add article, and this add article function takes in an article object. It's called article, yeah, article object. I think that's okay. And this article object is going to consist of the actual payload that we want to pass in to save to the database, such as like the title, the byline, the abstract, and whatever other data that we might want to add in here. The next, we'll do a try except. Try except or try catch. Error. I'm just going to do the error right here. So console. I'm going to do console error. You can do console log, console. There's so many different consoles, like console tables, pretty cool. And it's just going to console error the error. And do you want to do the dot then or the async await? Does anybody have a preference?
Async await.
All right. So we need to make this function, this arrow function, an async function. So async before we actually declaring it. And then here we'll say the response. And here we'll run the fetch. And the API endpoint for making post requests is the same as, well, what the hell? I hate that. It does that. As this URL up here. So this is the base URL. So I can just say fetch to the URL. And now this is where we want to pass an additional argument, which is an object. And that object, we need headers, which is an object of itself. So in the headers, we can pass in a bunch of different stuff. So if you like Google like what to pass in headers, post request, I don't know, something like that. Request, is there like something, I don't even know. I'm just like, okay, looking at MDM. So we can do, kind of like general headers. Oh, what the hell is that? Sure, so like authentication, authorization. You can pass in all like the stuff in the headers. So if you look at content type, so here, message body information, you can also pass in here. And that's actually what we're going to do. So in the headers, we're going to pass in content type. This is the type of content that the payload is going to be. And it's going to be application JSON. You can do pass in other data formats like XML. There's just a bunch of different data that you can pass in for the content type. The next thing we want to pass into the next key for this object is the method. We're actually, what kind of HTTP method are we doing? It's going to be a post request. And lastly, we want to actually pass in the article object in the body of the request. So the body, but again, we don't want to pass in just a JavaScript object through HTTP because it won't go through. So we need to JSON.stringify that object, article object, like so. And that's pretty much all we need for that fetch. And then once we get the data back, so like we can do const data equals the response dot JSON. So returning that response into JSON. I'll do await here. I forgot the await there. Did someone say something? Oh. And last, we will just return the data. I believe that's okay. So what questions do you have about creating a post request using the fetch API?
Hey, Tom, so if you don't put the weight on line 49, will that, by putting the weight on line 49, does it ensure that you won't return the data until it actually has the data?
I actually don't know. Let's try it without it. I'm just used to putting the await. So,
I've done it before without,
and
I
it,
didn't realize you could do that. And it seems like sometimes it would get the data, sometimes it wouldn't, depending on like a fraction of a second of how long it takes to get the response.
right. Yeah. I actually don't know if you absolutely need to have it there. I just always kind of put it there, but let's not put it there and see what happens. I don't think I've ever had an issue with it not being there. Has anybody else had any experience with that? No. All right. We'll try it out. All right. And the last thing we need to do is export the add article like so. All right. All right. And all right. So if we read through, so the method key, the options object defines the type of request that should be made. So we're the post request, assign it to the method. So here's another thing. So in the headers that says we are sending JSON, which is right here. But again, you could add other things like Ahmed said. So like headers can also include things like authentication tokens, instructions on how to handle cache files, just to name a few. All right. And then this is where we're passing the JSON stringified object. And it says there's a new test. The tests are kind of janky. So I'm just going to actually see if this works. If that test works, npm run test. If it doesn't work, I'll just skip it for now. I think some of my APIs up here are a little bit different, that they might not pass some of the tests. Oh, yep. See, there we go. Oh, it timed out. Interesting. Submits an article by calling add article. So yeah, it failed all the tests. Oh, well, we know they're working by running through the example. We'll try to troubleshoot those. npm start, I'm just gonna start the server again. And oh. And now let's go ahead and come on. Go to release 1, which is the add article page, the actual page we're going to use to actually add an article, and that's going to call that post request. So the first thing we need to do, let's first by creating that route. So if I come over here, in app.js, let's go to create a new route, and let's go to the create an add article route, and that component is going to render the add article page component. Let's just call it that. We're gonna have to create that component as well. So I'm coming up here, I'm adding add article page component, which we have yet to create. We're going to get an error, as you can see down here. So are we getting an error? Yep. Module not found. Cannot find the add article page. So under pages, we'll create an add article page.js. There we go. I can use React snippets, RCS, to create. Do you want me to do a functional based component or a class based component?
Functional.
Functional RCS. There we go. All right. So here's my add article page. So I'm just going to create an H1 initially. Add article right there. I always get used to passing in props into there. So we have our add article page. Now we can just manually go to add article. So I'm just going to do a hard refresh, make sure there's no errors, fetched all the articles. I can go to add article page. Let's see what happens. And there we have the add article H1 tag showing. Let me pause for questions as to, does anybody have any questions about adding an article page, adding a route to that, and creating a functional component?
When it comes to these APIs, like if we wanted to build and for our project, like something that you can add pictures and people can comment on it, is that something we would have to enable the people be able to do posts requests to our project?
No, you don't have to. You can keep it a totally open API where anybody can do anything, like make post requests, get requests to it.
When we host it though, can someone like just completely post a whole bunch of stuff and they just overflood, I guess, in Heroku it would be, and we
Yeah.
have like a certain capacity? Like,
They can, technically, yes, they can do that.
okay, and this is it out of the scope of the bootcamp to learn how to like limit the kind of requests for our projects? Or no?
In order to do that, the optimal way to do it is to have authentication to make sure that there is in fact a user, or have some logic on the back end that prevents users from making so many post requests in a certain amount of time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cool. All right. So we've got our, does anybody else have any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yep.
How'd you do that RSC template?
Oh, so I've got, there is a extension. If you scroll down here, I think it's React code snippets. So you can create, install that, and then it provides you with a bunch of RCC, like a bunch of different snippets that you can create. So create a class, React class component with methods. So list all the lifecycle methods with props, React class component, or RCS or RSC, which creates a React stateless component or functional component, all these different snippets. So yeah.
Sweet, thanks.
Yep, no problem.
I also downloaded one called ES7 that I found really helpful. It has a lot of those snippets and other things too.
Is it ES7?
ES7, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, it's good to know. I'll definitely check that out.
Yeah, that one's actually more popular than the one you're using.
Well, la-di-da. Yeah, then I'll probably actually switch. I'll switch to the ES7 one because I've had this one for a long time. All right. So add article page. So next thing we need to do, we need to render a form that has 3 fields: a title, a byline, and an abstract input. In addition to the form, you also need a submit button. Consider either using React Bootstrap or React Strap components for these form elements. A demo of the React Bootstrap can be found here. I'm going to click on that. Yeah, I don't like this that much. I'm going to go just type in React Bootstrap form. Where is it? So yeah, here. This is like perfect. So I can pretty much almost like copy this. Just gonna look down here for additional form inputs, different, okay. Ooh, that's kind of cool. Input groups, maybe? Is that different? It's maybe a little too complex. I'm just gonna use this very basic one up here, and I'm gonna modify it to meet my needs for this. All right, so copy that. I'm literally just copying this entire thing over from React Bootstrap documentation. It looks like I've got a form. I'm probably gonna need to import that from React Bootstrap. So form, is there anything else I need? So I've got form, form group, form text.
You wrote from there, Tom.
Hello from form. Thank you.
Try button as well.
Yep, button. Yeah, I think that's it from React Bootstrap. Cool. And I'll adjust these as needed. All right, so if I come over here and look at, there we go. We've got something, but let's get rid of some of the stuff that we don't need. So we don't need, this is not an email. But I think we can just leave it here. This is, the label is not an email. The label is a title, type, let's call it text, placeholder, enter a cool title. I don't know. I don't think we need this. We'll never share your email with anybody. That's underneath that. It looks like we don't need that. So I'm going to get rid of that portion. And we don't need password. This would be like a byline. Type, text, placeholder. This should be the byline. And what is this, a checkbox? I don't need that, so I can get rid of that checkbox. And then let's copy that down here because we need abstract. 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 All right, let's see what this looks like. All right, we have title, byline, abstract. I'm gonna do class name. I'm gonna add some like margin, M3. Does that work? Add some margin there. Just do add margin to everything, right? Oh shoot.
You could add a container to the main div.
Yeah, will that work right there? There, I think that's okay. What else? Maybe the button. I want it to be outline, primary. So it's got a hover state and size equals large. There, it's a large button. And what else do I want for that? Block level, so it goes across the entire screen. There we go. And I think that's it. Yeah, that works. Okay. So that's good for the form right now. Now I just need to add a handle click event. So when I fill out the form and click submit, I need it to actually do something. So I can say like on submit equals, so on the form right here, this button is submit and it's within the form container. So when I click submit, this submit button, this on submit, whatever function is in here, will execute. So I can say like handle form submit. And now I need to create a function, a const handle form submit, that takes in an event. And this is what I'm going to actually be dispatching or calling this add article API. So questions about what I've done so far with creating this form, creating this on submit.
Tom, could you repeat, I'm sorry for asking this thing. Can you repeat when you should add parentheses when you call a function?
When you should add parentheses like so?
Yes.
So you should never do that unless you need to, like, for example, if I needed to explicitly pass in some sort of argument in here. So if I had like some state value, like const, I actually don't even need to do that. But if I needed to pass something in here, I can invoke it. But in order to do so, I need to make that an anonymous function. Because if I just had this like so, when the add article page initially mounts or renders, it's going to come into here and it's automatically going to invoke this.
Right.
So if I needed to, for whatever reason, pass something into this function other than like an event or something, I would need to make this an anonymous function. And then it would handle like the on click.
Okay. So the way it is right now is the same as if you take away.
Correct.
All the parentheses. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep, no problem. All right. So the first thing I'm going to do event prevent default. Can anybody tell me what the prevent default does?
Prevents a refresh.
Prevents the refresh of the page. So a typical form, when you click submit, the default behavior is to refresh the page it's on. The event prevent default prevents the default behavior of the form, so it doesn't refresh. So I'm just going to console log submitting article and see if that console logs in the console over here. So I've got this stuff. If I click submit, submitting article right there. But I need to extract these values from the input fields. How do I go about doing that? There's a couple ways I can do that. But first, yeah. How do I go about extracting the title from this control group?
You just console log EVT to see if there's a variable that holds it.
All right. Yeah, it's console log EVT. And see where that's at. So if I click there, here's the event. So if I come down here, I don't know, it is trusted. Native event, submit target. Oh, okay. It looks like we got 3 input for event.target. All right, looking. I don't know. Does anybody see anything? That looks like FSD.
Is there value?
So that'd be around, ah, geez, this is very large. Is there a value? Should be,
I think
right?
I truncated because there were so many things.
Right. So let's just event.target. What is this? Target is, it looks like it's an array. Is that correct? Target 1, 2, 3. So maybe target. Let's just try index 0 dot value. Let's just see what that looks like. I'm going to refresh. Test title. And just do some stuff down here. Click submit. There we go. We've got test title there. Cool. You can, so that's one way we can do that. You can extract. So the very first input is the value index 0. If I wanted to do the other indexes, so index 1, index 2, if I refresh it, I click that, those are the other values right there. So that's one way we could do it. Another way we can do it is by giving these form controls a name. So in here we have placeholder type. If I say, hey, name equals title, and I do form control for name equals byline, because that's what that is. Form control name. And you can do this also with just like normal inputs in HTML. Abstract, like so. Instead of doing target.0, I can do dot, what is it? Target dot the name of whatever thing I'm trying to like reference. So byline and dot abstract. Let's see if this works as well. So same thing. So there's multiple ways to do it. That's one way. So cool. We're able to extract the values from the form, the input fields. But what we need to actually pass in to the add article APIs is an article object. So I'm going to create an article object called const article object. And it's going to have a title. And that value is going to be this value, or it's going to be, or it's going to be null. So this is, hey, if there's a value here, have it be that value. If there's no value in there, just have it be null. I'm going to do the same thing with the byline and the abstract. We can just make sure that that's correct by article object. Just console log the article object. I'm just do a hard refresh. Cool title, byline, and this is the abstract. And submit there. And there we go. We have our article object. Cool. So now we can actually pass that into the API. So I can say, do you want to, yeah, let's do async await again. So I'm going to make this async. Then here I'm going to do let response equals await add article. And when I did that, it automatically imported the add article API at the very top. And I'm going to pass in that article object. Like so. Make sure I add my semicolons. And now here, I'm just going to console log the response right here. So I can even do like a try catch. Here. Catch. Console dot error. Error. So if this works, hopefully it does. I'll get a new article. So I'm going to say new article, new byline, new abstract. If I submit it, here we have, what is that? Yep. So we went through. So came in here, article object got JSON stringified, returned that, and now we're console logging it there. And here's our new article. So if I go back to the home page, if I scroll down, you can see my new article, like so.
Are you going to run into errors where you can have just a completely null article now?
Let's see what happens. So I can add article, submit. Oh, see, I got a post request. I got an error. So this is where we get into error handling, and we'll cover that a little later. But actually, we'll cover. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna ask, do you lose the new article on a hard refresh from your list of articles?
Nope. So I do a hard refresh. There's my new article.
How come you lost the last one you did, the test article?
Did I do that in here?
It was in the console, yes.
I don't know. Did I kill? It may have. Yeah, I'm not quite sure. Huh.
If you kill the server and restart it, should everything still be there?
That might be the reason why. That might be why. I'm not quite sure. But yeah, we can try it right now. Because I noticed when I restarted it, ran that test, it opened it up in a new window. So I don't know. Yeah, so like it's doing so like that. I have a feeling it's going to lose. Yeah. So when I re-kill the server, the data doesn't persist. And that's just because of the HTTP server that we have. It's not actually storing to an actual database, but it still simulates it. So new article, new byline, new abstract. Get that. We have that new article, but we should probably have some, we'll deal with error handling at the very end, but we should probably have some, what kind of behavioral do you want after we create a successful article? Let me know. Do you want us to
navigate to the new article?
You want us to navigate to the new article? So I click that and it navigates to the new article. Cool. We can do that. All right. So we get a response. Actually, we might as well do the error handling here as well. So, okay. So we do a new article and then, so we get that response back. Right here, we have the ID, so we can actually go to the articles 42, like so. There we go. There's our article. Let me back up, refresh. So if we wanted to push, like go to that article ID, we have the response with the article ID in there. So we can even do props. Does anybody remember how you push to a specific URL?
You could do a link, router DOM link.
I'm sorry?
Use a router DOM link.
A router, like a DOM link? Will that automatically route you to, or is that like a button you click?
Do href.
You do href.
You just push to the props history.
Yep, and that's probably what I'd like to do. I can do the props.history.push, and I can do /articles / response.id, like so. So if I go ahead and create a new article, another article, and click submit, it automatically pushes me to another article. It's kind of nice. But let's go back and do refresh. Let's handle error handling. If I just click submit, it pushes me to undefined. But I do get a response back. It says error. So I get an object that has an error key with a status code, model not found, unknown article ID, undefined, name, error, status code 404. So I can do a couple of things for that. I can say in my add article API, in my data, I can say, hey, if the data has an error key on it, I can return something like an object that has a message that says, I can even say like data.error.message. I can do that. So data.error.message. I can do status code. What was it? 404 or something. Else, I can do something else here. I can either return the article object, which I guess I'll do right here. So before we actually, I'm going to console log the response again and go back and just do a hard refresh. So if I click that, here's my error that I'm being passed back. ETA error. So this is what's actually being passed to the front end. So here I can actually do something with regards to the front end. So if the response has an error on it, so if response.error do something else, push it to the actual article. What do we want to happen if we get an error here? Do you want like a banner or something, a pop-up, or I don't know, what do you guys want? An alert? Does anybody have a preference?
Sad face animation.
I don't think I can do a sad face animation, but we can do like something like this, like an alert, like so. And so here, I can do some like, was it danger? Danger. I'll actually get rid of that first. Say like there was an error. Save it. Probably gonna get an error.
You might have to import it.
Yep, need to import that. So including button, I'm gonna import an alert. And it says there was an error, even though there wasn't an error yet. So we can do, I'm gonna add some margin to that. So what I can do here is just like, hey, like I'm gonna create some state. Why not? I can say like message. Let's do message, set message equals use state. Let's just initially say false, or actually let's just do null. And in React, I can import use state, not use, like so. And if there's an error, I can do set message, and I can pass in the response.error.message. Is that what's coming up here? So the response data.error.message, and that's the error message. And down here with this alert, I can do some conditional rendering. I can say, hey, if there's a message, and let's actually make sure everything's kind of aligned, display that message. Something like that. Just going to refresh that. And if I just click submit, it says the article instance is not valid, details title can't be blank, null value, blah, blah, blah. There. So now we have an error message. I can even try this one. Same thing, kind of gives you a description of specifically what the error is.
Because it's a form, could you just add required as a HTML parameter?
Exactly. So in order to do that, so this is why you should have multiple validations in your entire stack. Is you should have front end validations and server side validations as well as database validations. So if I come down to here, forms, if I do like required, I think it's just required. So if I just add this form control, if I just say like required, I believe that's what it is. This adds like, hey, this is in fact required. And it'll give me like a validation message. So if I come over here, and if I do a refresh, and if I could try to submit, it says, please fill out this field. It's like, okay. Please fill out this field. Okay. Click there. Please fill out that field. Great. Now I submit it, and now it works. But in the event that someone bypasses that form, somehow hijacks that response and injects data in there, and like somehow deletes some data from those fields, it shouldn't successfully post to the database, and then this error message will actually show up. Cool. So let's quickly review what we did. So we created this form, we created this handleSubmit method. In this handleFormSubmit, we created an async that takes in the event. We're doing event prevent default. We're extracting the values from the input fields and assigning it to an article object. We have a try catch here. We're doing await running or invoking the AddArticle API by passing the the article object into the AddArticle API. Comes over here to the article API. Here's the article object. Comes into the try, runs the fetch, goes to the URL. We're creating a object here that has the headers with the content type of application JSON with the method, which is a post request. And then inside the body, we're passing the article object and we're JSON stringifying that object. And then we get that response, and we're converting that response into a JavaScript object and to a variable called data. If that data has an error key on it, that means there was an issue saving that article to the database. And we're returning an JavaScript object that has just a message key on it that has the actual error message that's being returned, as well as just a status code of 404. Else, if anything else, that means it was a successfully saved to the database. Then we're just returning the data, which is the article object. Then we're getting that response, and then we're kind of doing the same thing here. Hey, if the response has an error key on it, like so, then we set a new message to state, and then we do some conditional rendering here. Hey, if there is a message, then display this alert message that has that message in there. Else, we're going to push the article ID to the route articles / article ID, which is response.id is the same thing as the article ID. Questions about AddArticlePage? We'll come back here. We have all our articles. There we go. Let's just make sure that we've done everything. We also want to show a success message when an article is submitted. All right, well, we're not doing that. We decided to deviate from that. But if we wanted to do the same thing, we can literally just, hey, instead of push here, we can set the message to, instead of an error message, set it to like a success message, and then have some conditional here. If there's a message, we can condition render it, whether it's an error message or like a success message. So we can do just conditional rendering here for the success message. Cool. With that, let's go ahead and take a 9-minute break and be back at 11. All right. So we've added an article. We are successfully adding an article using a post request. The next is the login page. Again, we'll want to create a new page, but now we already kind of are getting familiar with the routine with the route and the page. So let's go ahead and create a, so after the UI is completed, attach an event handler to the forms on submit event in your event handler. Simply console log the values of the email and password. So we're not actually doing true authentication yet. We'll be tackling that tomorrow, but right now we're just going to be adding the page as well as just an on event handler. So the first thing we'll do is create a route. Let's call it login. Let's just call this login page. Then come up to the top here. We're going to have to create a login page component. So inside of pages, we'll create a login page.js, and then we can do RCS to create a functional based component template like so. There we go. And then, oh, crikeys. Then in here, we'll create a form with like a login page. So just like we did with the add article page, let's actually bring that add article page up so we can kind of extract some of the items that we want from there. Come on. All right. Is this what it is? Oh, this is the article page. I'm an idiot. Add article page. Come on. All right. So yeah, let's grab that form. I'm just going to copy this whole thing over. Like so. And then we'll customize it a little bit for email, etc. So let's get rid of one of the form inputs. And let's import form button from React Bootstrap, like so. Can we do pass some props there if we want to? Don't know what we're doing with props yet. So let's say this is a password, or I'm sorry, email. And instead of byline, should be password. Placeholder, enter your email. Placeholder, enter your password. Let's take a look at what that looks like right now. All right. So if I refresh this, and if I go to /login, so everything works. Oh, snaps. What happened? Oh, so I had this handle form submit. It's not defined. So let's do handle login submit. And again, I'll create a arrow function, takes in an event. I think it just wants us to console log some information like the email and password. permission to do console login right now. I'm going to format my document, get the indentation correct. All right. There we go. So cool. We have our email, password, email, password, and submit. Oh, looks like we want event.prevent default. All right. And the password is showing our password. We don't want that. And the email. So we want this to be hidden and this to have some validation. So it ensures that we in fact do like an email address. So if we come over here to React Bootstrap, forms, is there anything like, should I scroll to the very top? Sorry, my computer is slowing down. Just click submit. Oh, that was weird. So if I look here, I can look at type email. So if I grab that type, so right here, it's just text. But if I do type email, it might add some validation to this input field. So if I just have something like that and click enter, it says, please include an @ in the email address. My input is missing that @ symbol. Cool. So I've got that. And now the password, instead of type text, I can type password. And that should automatically add hidden carets to it.
And that's from Bootstrap, that verification?
Yep. That's automatically, that's why, yeah, it's automatically from React Bootstrap. That's why these CSS libraries are great, because they already have a lot of functionality that you would have to manually do yourself. It already has all that stuff implemented in the framework or in the library, which is really nice. Because right now I'm actually working on a real world example of a form, and I have to do all the validations for it myself, which is frustrating, but also kind of fun. But instead of doing like a type email, I have to create some crazy validation function that makes sure everything is there. So I can say name instead of title, it's going to be email, because that's what that is. Instead of name byline, I'll just say password. And then login, I can just console log. Whoop. The event, event.target.email.value. And likewise with the password. And let's see if everything looks okay. If I come over here, I do hard refresh at email.com, password. I click submit. There we've got my email and password. And I literally just typed in password. Cool. Let's add something to the nav bar that makes pushes us to a button that says login as well as add article page. Well, let's just make sure that we just did everything that we wanted. If you haven't noticed, there's there's no error handling. We actually already covered the error handling. So we've kind of done that. We've already done kind of the functional version or functional components. So in the app.nav, let's add, do I have a with router up here? Let's add a button or a link. I don't know what I want to do. I could just do import link from React router DOM. And then in here, I have a link tag to add new article, or just add article that goes to add article. I can do the same thing to log in, like so. Let's see if this works. So I've got add article and log in. So I mean, it's not that pretty, but we've got that. Yeah. Oop. Does anybody else, what questions do you have about the login page? No questions? Is there anything that you all want to see? I think
Can you go over the outline of what you did for the login page again, just like the bullet points of what you had to do?
Yeah. So the first thing I did, I went to app.js. I'm going to close that out. I created a new route with an exact path of login. So yeah, have the exact path of login. It renders this login page component. I imported the login page component up here, and I created the login page component like so. Functional component. I'm passing in props right now, but I'm not doing anything with props. I'm returning a form that has an onSubmit handler that executes this. Oh, whoops. That invokes this handle login submit. And I've got two input fields or input fields that has a label of email. The type of it is an email type, so it has some validations to make sure it is in fact an email address. I've got a placeholder. I've got the label of email. The second one is a password. I have it required, so it has some validations to make sure that that field is in fact filled out. The type is password. That makes sure that whatever I'm typing in is hidden from the user. I've got a placeholder here, and then I've got a button here that is the type submit. So when I click submit, this whole entire form is going to execute this onSubmit login handle login submit function. So when I click submit, it comes in here, do event prevent default and that prevents the page from refreshing. And then I'm console logging, just login. I don't really need that. And then I'm literally console logging event.target email value, which is the value of this input field, specifically right here. And it knows that that's the value because I'm referencing the name of that field. So email is the name of that field. So it knows, hey, I want to extract that value right here. Likewise with password, I've got a name of password. I can call this whatever I want, but I need to come up here and change this to whatever I want up here as well, and it will still act the same. .com, password, oh, right there. But I call it kind of what it actually is. So those are the steps to create that login page. All right.
Can you show how to move the search filter into the nav bar now?
Yeah, let's see if we can do that. So the search filter, all right. So it's currently located on the home page. So I'm coming down here. Let's see what's going on. So this handle search submit comes into here. Great. So I want to move this. What is that for? Message form. Okay. I'm going to move this form to the nav bar. And bear with me if this doesn't work as intended because I haven't done this yet. Like so, and I'm going to need to import, it looks like form control, and button. So form control, and button. I just want to see if that works. All right. Handle search is not defined. So it comes in here, handle search. Okay. Let's see what I want to do. So therefore, this handle search that's originally on the home page, I need to extract that. And let's see, what do I need to do? So this is where, what do I need to do? So I'm
This
actually,
is where I was getting confused. It's like where to place certain elements in the design is confusing.
yep. So I'm going to do it in here in the handle search. And this is, so I'm doing it in the app.js component. And I'm going to pass this. Let's see, homepage, render homepage, render article. So I'm app.nav. So I need to add like a property here. So this is where you're going to actually need to extract all the articles that are rendered on the homepage and bring it up to app.nav. So I'm going to bring this up here. Or not app.nav, app.js file. And I'm going to convert this into a functional based component just because the other thing was a use effect. So const handle search, return. I'm going to format the document. So I've got const handle search. I've got this use effect that has articles. I'm also going to have to extract state from the home page and bring it up to app.js. So what I'm going to need to do is when I go to load app.js, I need to grab all the articles, and I'm going to need to pass the articles down from the app.js file down to the home page. But I'm also going to need to, from the AppNav, pass this handle search up to the app.js, which updates all the articles, and then those articles get passed down to the homepage component. So let's just make sure it's not going to work, but let's just see if we can get the articles to display on the app.js component. So I'm also doing here articles, fetch articles. So I need to import fetch articles from.
Hey, Tom.
Yep.
You mind if I make a suggestion? So
yeah,
when I implemented this, again, there's many ways to kind of go about it. The way I envisioned it was, so we have our search bar in our app nav, and then the only thing I extract out of app nav is the actual search filter word, and then I pass that word down as props down to my homepage or my section page. Therefore, the reason I went about it that way was so that my homepage and or my section page are still fetching the articles. The only thing that's being passed in is the actual filter from the string. So that made it a little easier in terms of less changes, I guess, and kind of each component was still doing its own, I guess, fetching.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. That's actually what I'm going to do. So where's the app.js? So I'm just going to back up out of all this. Yeah, I'm glad Ankur said that, because you do want your functions or your components to just handle the logic of whatever is being, whatever that component's supposed to do. So essentially, Ankur, let me understand. So you have this handle search submit. You pass that down to app.nav. I click in the search bar. That updates some state up here in the app component. That query that you're looking for gets passed down as a prop to the homepage. Is that correct?
Yep, that's what
Cool.
yeah, that's what I want about.
Yeah. So still need to use state. This handle search. Is that still going to work with this fetch articles? Trying to think.
Yeah, so I think I might have made a couple other changes, like for my fetch APIs. I think I had it so I could pass in a filter and then also a section. So again, this is kind of getting ahead, but the ability to search a section page. So you would pass in multiple parameters, and the fetch API might need to be updated to take in a filter optionally.
Okay. So this here, then the articles. Okay, just trying to think, because the way this is, it's still in your handle search. Does it still? Oh, okay.
So yeah, I would only pass down the filter word or the search word
Yeah.
down to my homepage or section page.
Okay, so this handle search will literally just take in. I'm actually going to bring that back to the homepage just to keep things here, and then I can go about changing it. So we have the app.nav. So say like, what do you const handle search query, and this takes in the like query, and then I can set. I'm going to create a query. Doing this live query, set query, and I passing this down as a prop to the app.nav. So handle search query. So I've got that. Comes up here, search query. So it comes over to app.nav. Got the handle search. So props. This dot props dot handle search query. See if this is still throwing an error. Articles is not defined. And app.js. All right, and then so that query gets brought up to here, and then that query gets passed down to the home page, right?
Yep.
So this is a new capability, which I think we're covering tomorrow, right? That this render homepage is going to just render a homepage component with a query being passed in as a prop query, like so. And instead of doing component render the homepage, the route, this component, this route component can accept a property called render, which takes in a function that only renders a component. So this render takes in a function that renders a component. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm creating a function that renders a component, and that allows me to pass props from a parent down to a child component in the router. Like so. Let's see if this is still working. Getting a bunch of errors. All right. So it's starting to show up. So now if I go to home page, I've got props right here. I can extract props, const query equals props. And then that use effect. This async. So then I would just run like fetch articles, search query. Something like that. And I can get rid of this part, all right? Yep. I'm just looking through the code. So I have query.
Yeah, I think the only thing
Props.
that might need to change also is the dependency on line 89.
Line 89.
Sorry, on 83. So if the query changes, that would trigger the use factor.
Yep. Thank you. I'm just looking and see if that.
Would you have to adjust a fetch articles function to take in a query?
Fetch articles function to take in a query. So the fetch articles should automatically take in like a query. So
Okay.
so right now, so because the query is null, let's actually go back to app.js. Let's do null initially. There we go. P search, I might get an error. Okay, what did it just do? It refreshed. So query, set query. So actually, I'm gonna stop recording right now. Stop. Actually, okay. Let's continue to move the input field from the home page to the nav bar. So what we did was move the form to the nav bar, and what we needed it to do is pretty much move all that logic to the app.js directory or component, and then be able to pass data down to the various components that we need, because app.nav stands on the same level, almost at the same level as what would be the homepage component. So in the app.js component, we created a state called query, and what the object is to have a handle submit inside of the app.nav. And when we click submit to like query a new folder or a new article, we want that query to come up here and change in the app.js directory, which is like the component, the parent directory, and then pass that query variable, that query value down to the homepage component, which will then render over here, render very specific articles based off of your query. So what we need to do is create a handle search query function that takes in an event, just like we do normally when we create a like a handle, a form submit. We want handle search query event prevent default. So we don't want that form to automatically refresh the page. So when you click search here, we don't want it to refresh. And then we want to extract the app.nav value from this input. So what we're going to need to do is pass this handle search down as a property to the app.nav component right here, handle search query. We're passing that down as a prop. And then when we pass that down as a prop, when we click, type in something like some article name and click search or click the search button, it calls this .props.handle query search, which if you come back to the app.js, comes up in here, takes in the event, prevent default, that which prevents the value or the form from refreshing the screen. And then we want to set the query. So the state of app.js, this query, to event.target.search.name. So we're targeting right here the search input in AppNav. So right here, this form control, which is just an input. It has a name of search. So we're extracting that value from this input field, assigning that to this app.js's state, so the parent state, and then we're going to have to pass that down to the home page, which we're doing on line 20 and line 31. So right here where we normally render a component, which would be the homepage component, we're actually rendering a function that returns a component. So right here, render homepage component, which is a function that returns the homepage component. And this allows us to pass in state from the parent down to a child within the router. So we're passing the query, which is the parent state, app.js's state, as a property to the homepage component. So when we do that, we come over here inside our use effect. We're passing in props like so. We're destructuring props or the query value from props. In this use effect, we need to pass in the query here into the fetch articles API. And then down here, if articles does not have a length, run that. But also if the query has a length, also run the fetch articles function, async function. So if we come over here and we refresh this, oh, what just happened? Delete. Everything's working as normal. And then if I want to search here, click search. Uh-oh. Why isn't this working now? P search, not working. So we're passing the query down to the homepage component as a prop, and we're deconstructing the query from props. Inside the use effect, we're passing in the query. Then if the articles.length has a length, or if there is a value at query, run that fetch articles async again. And we need to, over here, we're set query event.target.search.value. I think I had before it said .name, which is not correct. Obviously, that was a bug right there. But if all that works as correctly, come over here and do a refresh there. We can search, click search. We have an articles, F articles. We get our articles showing up there. And that's how you can extract the input from the homepage component to the AppNav component. It's a little tedious, but it's just a way of passing data between parent and children within the router and using this render property. All right, and that is it.